Debate, the Honourable Member for Nepean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to speak on the Budget Implementation Act. This is a challenging time in a challenging world. With every challenge comes an opportunity. It is in this context I speak on this Budget Implementation Act. There are two main things in this budget for me. The first is that we will ensure Canadians that Canadians can continue to count on us for being them and with our continued support to all vulnerable Canadians. The second is we will also meet the challenges of today and tomorrow while building Canada that is more secure, more sustainable, and ensure the prosperity that we enjoy today is available to the future generations too. Let's talk on the challenging time. We all know the pandemic hit not only Canada, but all the countries across the world. With the cooperation of Canadians, we managed to contain the pandemic to the best extent possible. I think we are one of the best countries in the world who have managed the pandemic quite well. The economy got hit. 8.9 million working Canadians lost their jobs. We came out in support of them. We also supported more than 500,000 small businesses through the wage subsidy scheme, and we also supported them with the Canada Business Account. And we managed the pandemic well with relatively lesser number of deaths compared to many other countries in the world. Then came the war, the illegal invasion of Russia on Ukraine. This created a problem in the energy prices across the world. It also gave rise to the rising prices of food grains. And we also had the problem due to pandemic, the supply chain issue. There's a lot of shortage because the supply chains were disrupted across the world. And we also realized the important self-reliance in that time when critical goods were not being produced, not being available at the right time to all those who needed them. And due to all this, we faced inflation, which peaked to 8.1% in September of 2022. But during the last 9 months, we have seen the inflation rate going down. Currently, it stands at around 4.3% today. So, with all this, we can still say that Canada has relatively done well. In fact, amongst the G7 countries, we have got the best economic growth. We have recovered 865,000 jobs, more than it was before pandemic. The challenging times is also there in terms of globalization. Globalization, as we knew it for several decades, is on the way down. The multilateral agencies like WTO, on which the international order-based trade depended on, is also facing its own problems. The appellate body at WTO, with all the vacancies, it can't even operate today due to non-cooperation by some key member states. What we are seeing is that the more and more bilateral free trade agreements are taking place. The free trade agreements of certain blocks of countries are taking place. And that is the concept of friendshoring is coming in. While these are the challenges, they also provide opportunities for Canada. I'll come to that a bit later. We also had the Inflation Reduction Act in the United States, our biggest trading partner, which was a game changer. When this Inflation Reduction Act, taken together with the US Science and Chip Act, combined together, they are close to $1 trillion legislation. They have rewritten the rules of industrial policy, industrial development in the United States. The Inflation Reduction Act did affect many of the trading partners with the United States, but the bulk of it, Canada was able to manage through very effective lobbying, both by different levels of the government and the industry bodies. And we could, before the IRA became a legislation, we were able to ensure that all North American manufactured vehicles are included in the incentives and subsidies proposed in that IRA. And, in the International Trade Committee, when we were discussing the effects of IRA on Canada, one trade union leader very aptly put, we can't respond for every dollar to dollar to IRA, but we can respond smartly. And that is what Canada has done, and that is what Canada is also doing now with this current budget. Mr. Speaker, Canada is prosperous, has been prosperous for a long time due to our natural resources, oil, gas, minerals, metals, forestry products, and due to the hard work of several generations of Canadians. But the world is changing. The world is moving more towards the knowledge-based economy. In this knowledge-based economy is the flat world out there. The Canadians, especially the younger generation Canadians today, they face competition from all across the world, whether from Sydney, Australia, Tokyo, Japan, Shanghai, China, Mumbai, India, Frankfurt, Germany, or any other place. We all are facing the same competition in this digital world. Even in this digital economy, we have invested. In the last year budget, we came out with investment of over $1.2 billion on artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and other advanced technologies. In this budget, we have come with $1.2 billion for the space technology. On that, if possible, I'll touch base on that a little later. Now, in this, the other key thing is that as the world goes towards the clean economy, between now and 2050, it is projected that about $100 trillion of private capital will be invested across the world in building the global clean economy, and that is where the opportunity lies for Canada. The opportunity of being a supplier of critical minerals, the entire food chain of the transition towards the electrical vehicle industries we have, and Canada can play a major role. We have already seen investments announced by major auto manufacturers in Canada. We also find announcement, I believe even today there's going to be a very major announcement on battery manufacturing in Canada. We have seen the battery recycling plants coming up in Canada. And Canada is projected to be one of the leaders for the supply of the critical minerals that is required for this entire ecosystem. And we need to see the processing of the critical minerals also take place in Canada today. So we have a lot of opportunity in that front. However, there we have a small issue with the new mines coming up to mine the critical minerals, the long regulatory process that is involved in there. For that, the federal government has come out with agreements with various provinces. For example, we have the Ontario table, where we have an agreement with the province of Ontario, where we can work together to align ourselves on the timelines, on the resources, on the regulatory approval process, so that we can deliver quicker, faster approvals that is required to get the minerals from the ground up for battery manufacturing. Quickly, Mr. Speaker, as I mentioned, we are investing $1.9 billion in Canada's space agencies. This funding will support the development of new technologies and capabilities, including space robotics and exploration missions, as well as support for Canadian companies involved in the space industry. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments? Question et commentaire. The honourable member for Flamborough-Glanbrook.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd ask through you to the honourable member what he has to say to his constituents who, like mine, are struggling with high interest rates and mortgage rates. Those that are renewing their 5-year mortgages, or those that are on variable mortgages, are very much feeling the gut punch of the interest rate increases that are resulting from the inflationary spending and deficits of his government, and that are not abated in any way by this budget. So it's ravaging household budgets, and when the mortgage costs have doubled and the rents have doubled, that's having a huge impact on household budgets. Thank you.
The honourable member for Nepean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I mentioned in my speech, the inflation is the result of many things that are outside the control of government and indeed Canada. The pandemic, followed by the illegal Russian war on Ukraine, the supply shortages, the pent-up demand, and the governments across the world, including Canada, investing in Canadians. All that resulted in the inflation, which was quite high. It affected my constituents and all Canadians indeed. And inflation rose to 8.1% in September 2022. And during the last 9 months, it is trending downwards at 4.3%. The interest rates that was introduced by the Bank of Canada to combat inflation has already started taking effect. And the Bank of Canada expects the inflation rate to go down to 3% shortly. Hopefully, the interest rate should come down in the next 12 to 24 months, and that should provide relief to all Canadians, including honourable members, constituents, and mine.
Question et commentaire, l'honorable député de Joliette.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je remercie mon collègue pour son discours. Là, on discute du projet de loi de mise en œuvre du budget. C'est les mesures budgétaires qui sont annoncées dans le budget sont appliquées à une première partie dans ce projet de loi-ci qui est très volumineux. Vers la fin du projet de loi, on sort complètement du cadre budgétaire, puis on décide de désigner Charles III comme étant le roi du Canada. Je lis, c'est dans la section 31. Le Parlement du Canada consent à la prise par Sa Majesté d'une proclamation royale sous le grand sceau du Canada fixant la forme des titres royaux pour le Canada de la façon suivante. Charles III, par la grâce de Dieu, roi du Canada et de ses autres royaumes et territoires, chef du Commonwealth. Est-ce que mon honorable collègue trouve que ça a du bon sens que ça se retrouve dans le projet de loi de mise en œuvre du budget ou ça devrait plutôt être voté à part? Puis, est-ce qu'en 2023, on a toujours besoin d'avoir ce genre de truc? Merci, Monsieur le Président.
By the grace of God, the honourable member for Nepean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, Budget Implementation Act covers many things that are required immediately, and some of the things that are mentioned by my honourable member needs to be considered and voted upon in this Budget Implementation Act. Thank you.
Commentaire, questions and comments. The honourable member for Nunavut.
And I'd like to thank the member for his intervention. I just came from Kingite. It's a small community, about 1,000 people, I think. In that community, they just suffered a rush of 4 suicides in a very short amount of time. At the same time, in this budget proposed about almost $1 billion to persuade Indigenous peoples to be engaged in environmental assessment processes, which you speak briefly of. So my question to you is, what is this Liberal government saying that it will continue to suppress and oppress Indigenous peoples and on their backs continue to profit from their lands so that they can continue to make sure that Indigenous peoples are not getting the benefits that they deserve for the resources that are being exploited from their lands? The
honourable member for Nepean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very sorry to hear the number of suicides in the small community. Mr. Speaker, the track record of our government during the last 7.5 years shows how closely we work with the Indigenous community, how closely we have involved them, consulted them, and worked with them for the benefit of the entire Indigenous community, and to provide them all the assistance that is required, not only to improve their health, but also to tackle the economic development that is very badly needed. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Reprise du